day, everyone. This is the morning meeting, courtesy of Two Way. Sean, Dan, and I are here to help you through the day. We've got some special stuff today. First of all, the third installment of our People's Poll. David Burrell will be here to run us through some slides, including some questions submitted by you, the members of the Two Way community. And Batya Ungar Sargon is here. Dan and Batya and three of their colleagues are debuting today, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Two Way platform, our newest show, the group chat, and we'll talk to you about that. It's a show like no other. You see a lot of chat shows on TV, but this one's different. So we'll talk about that. And as always, we want your questions. So if you want to get in on the conversation, please raise your hand. We've had a lot of It's Thursday. We've had a lot of new people on all our shows this week. So if you'd like to get in on the conversation and you've never done it before, today would be a good day. Raise your electronic hand. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand. Remember, whatever platform you're on, we believe here in peace, love, and understanding. All three words are important. Extending the presumption of grace to all. And as always, points are subtracted for smack in the chat. So don't do that. Here's what's happening today. President Trump, in theory, once again, no public events, but we saw yesterday no public events. And as Sean correctly predicted, he talked up a storm at an event that was open to the press. Lunch with the vice president at 12:30. Participates in a swearing-in ceremony for the chief of protocol at 5 p.m. and 1 o'clock, Caroline Levitt briefs. It'll be quite a briefing. A lot of the focus, I'm sure, will be on tariffs. No known events for the vice president today. Don't even know where he is.
Well, he's not in Vegas anymore if he's having lunch with the president.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Nothing going on Capitol Hill still. We're getting initial jobless claims, GDP, and pending home sales today. Some of those are already out. We'll check in on those. And then on the legal front, hearing in Boston federal court to decide whether to extend the temporary order that was issued last week, blocking the Trump administration from barring Harvard from having international students in the United States. There's good questions in the People's Poll about this topic. And luckily, Botcha's point of view that every Harvard slot that's currently going to someone from Beijing should go to someone from Ohio is not dominating in the poll. So I was glad to see that I'm not totally out of step with my country, women and men. And the Supreme Court's hearing arguments today, as well as perhaps releasing some decisions, which we'll get before too long. All right, on tariffs last night, decision by these three judges in this special court system where they're the court of the first jurisdiction, but now the appeal that the administration says it will make will go to I would call the regular federal courts, eventually expected to get to the Supreme Court. Lots of uncertainty now beyond the fact that the administration lost in this initial ruling and the fact that they plan to appeal. How quickly will the next court take it up? How will the administration deal with the existing trade negotiations? How will they deal with taking the tariffs off? Will they move to try to reimpose some of the tariffs using a different authority? Lots of questions. Now, lots of people have weighed in. Stephen Miller, the president's domestic policy advisor and all-powerful prime minister, said on Twitter last night, the judicial coup is out of control. This federal trade court panel included amongst the three judges, one picked by Donald Trump, but nonetheless, he's saying judicial coup out of control. Another conservative with a very different point of view, 106, Eric Erickson, who is a conservative who calls things like he sees them, said on his Substack, raising taxes on Americans is a matter for the Congress. The federal court is right in this instance. The activist was not the court, but the president. Contrary to the claims of hysterics on the left and right, the system continues to work with checks and balances. I don't always agree with Eric Erickson, but I often do. And I think every sentence he wrote there is, if not unambiguously correct, at least arguably so. So a lot of ambiguity, as I said, about what happens next. We know what the court ruled. Sean, what are you looking for in the short and medium term on this front now from the White House, from the courts, and from others?
Well, there's two issues at stake. Eric is not entirely wrong, but the question, the Constitution actually delegates trade and trade authority to the Congress, but they have yielded that authority for decades. And to suddenly say that the president doesn't have emergency rights calls into question a much bigger issue. So I think I don't think I know, the administration will pursue the legal aspects of this and the merits of it and go through the court system as has been litigated. If we go back though, and this discussion actually occurred, we talked about this at the time that the president did this. There is tools in his toolbox, 122, 202, 232s, and 301s that are all trade mechanisms that are at the president's disposal. The problem is, and the reason that that side of the trade team lost procedurally within what the president should do early on was they take longer. You have to do an actual investigation. You have to file at the WTO. I mean, there's things that go through those things that delay him. The president wanted immediate action. This was a warning that his staff gave him. If we go this route of using IEPA, the emergency language, this is the danger of doing it. And he chose to go down that route knowing that that could happen. But the fallback position and where they are now, and expect to see a lot of discussion on both 122 and 301, is that they always said to him, if we fail on this, we've got this in our back pocket. So the reporting on this at best is weak and inconclusive, because part of it is it's not like the court ruled against him and it's over. They're appealing it. B, they're going to use these other tools. And C, I think that that the sectoral tariffs on steel and aluminum and whatever are still in place, and his bare minimum tariff rate is now, like, he does have the absolute authority for 15%. So again, I think if you read the headlines on a lot of this stuff, it's very, very misleading as far as what actually happened. It's not good for him, just to be clear. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, they went down a path and they were given an alternative. I think it would have been smarter to take all of the trade tools, but this just muddies up the water a little bit and doesn't strengthen his case. That being said, again, I think we'll be having a very different conversation probably in 7 to 10 days.
Dan, what happens next?
I think Sean's right. The administration will keep trying. I think politically, it's not actually the worst thing for them, because they kind of get the benefit of the markets turning around and potentially some stabilization, but they can bang the drum and say, the courts and other people are stopping us. I think for those saying it's a coup, that's ridiculous. That this is what we have checks and balances for. Like, I happen to love America and think it's a great thing, even when we're on the wrong side, when it goes against, Democrats or goes against what I believe in. I think for Democrats, the challenge is the best thing we can keep saying is there's instability. It's raising prices. I keep saying the North Star of what Trump is trying to do is not something that we are fighting, which is to reshore, open markets, kind of level the playing field. But I think, we talk about the other part of this is Taco, which is that a lot of people on Wall Street don't believe Trump really is going to follow through on what he says, which I've been saying now for a while. The markets are taking off this morning. I mean, they have to be looking at this. It's stabilized because he backed down. It's taking off because they think there may be a long-term kind of easing out of this. And are you really going to try to put everything back on and layer it up?
Dan, can I just for the sake of the audience, that not everyone reads some of the trade press and saw that thing. There's an acronym that the president was asked about in the Oval Office yesterday, that apparently some folks in the media coined.
No, on Wall Street. That was not a media firm.
They claim.
I think it was coined by the media, but they use it on Wall Street.
Right. And they claim Wall Street people said it. I think it was media people who were walking on Wall Street, but I digress. So it stands for Trump always chickens out, which I think is the dumbest thing ever. I mean, I think that, to me, because a court rules against you, and because, like, this is his default has actually been the opposite. I think, has he come to some deals with some folks? Absolutely. But the idea of chickening out doesn't seem to be appropriate as a label in this case. And I found the whole thing kind of stupid.
Boy, I have to admit, I wish that I had come up with that, because Sean, I just disagree. And I've been saying this for months. He does chicken. He does not want to truly go. He keeps backing down. I mean, the irony is, it's like the arsonist fireman. He creates the fire and he puts it out with what he says, or like, we're making progress. They're begging us for talk, so I'm pulling them down. There's a reason these deals haven't been cut. The rest of the world saying the same thing.
So So Trump was incredibly thin-skinned in the Oval Office yesterday when he was
Yep.
confronted with taco, but you guys are a day late. The new acronym is tuna. We've moved from taco to tuna. Do you know what tuna stands for?
Nope.
Trump understands nothing about tariffs. That's what people
Isn't
are
that
saying now.
Tunat?
Tuna. Well,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. It is,
It's French, Sean.
but they
Tuna.
want four letters.
It's a silent. It's
I'll
like
just
song. Paul
I'll,
Songus. It's a silent T.
I'll just say I agree with Sean. This is not the end of the president's leverage using tariffs, but I'm focused, continue to be focused, zero sum on two things. Are they going to get bilateral deals done or not by the summer? And second is, are the EU countries going to Beijing to meet with Xi in the summer for some economic meeting? If that meeting occurs, I believe the president will have a hard time winning this trade war. If he can get that meeting canceled, including as a condition of some of these bilateral deals, I think the toing and froing may well be just
And
fine.
Mark, I think as part of that deal, you got to keep asking yourself, what does he do with Ukraine? Because if he walks
Yeah,
away from Ukraine, it pisses the Europeans off. Are they going to turn
yeah,
around and say, now we're going to come be in your camp on trade?
yeah. I agree they're somewhat connected, but I don't think they have to be connected necessarily. All right, Elon announced last night that he's yes, formally separating. His temporary special government employee status will end on Friday. Some have reported that last night he began his exit interviews. I'm not really sure why he needs that, but whatever. Lots we could say backward looking about Doge and his performance. New York Times has a very gossipy piece, five byline piece about the relationship between Trump and Musk. And one thing they say in the piece is that Musk promised to give like 100 or 150 million dollars to support the midterms, and he's not written a check yet. So, Dan, what role would you imagine Musk will play going forward for Team Trump writ large now after he departs?
It's a great question, Mark. I really wonder what he does because read the leaking that he tried to intervene in the OpenAI Abu Dhabi deal. I took, Sean, curious your thoughts, as a little bit of the White House firing a shot across the bow.
Yep.
That you think your reputation's taking a hit now, you keep this up, and we will come at you. And the fact that Musk has now been quiet, he did not respond to that so far online. His allies in the media and the kind of X universe have not responded. I will be curious if he stays on the team because it's in his long-term interest to have the president as an ally, or if he turns on him. I really, and I also think you got to watch what happens with Doge because I keep saying this. I don't believe Congress believes in this at all. I think they're going to completely undo it. And does he get frustrated with them? And does like everyone move on? Or does this continue to linger as an issue?
I think
Sean?
that the nice thing about, at least it gives me comfort on the overall issue, is that Russ Vought is OMB director because Russ has spent years thinking about the construct of this. And so, but I'll make five quick points. One is I think Elon learned the hard way that you can't, I always said when I was in the White House, I was press secretary and communications director, and it's a way too long of a story to go into, but you can't hold two major jobs at one time. He was trying to lead this government effort, which was a Herculean task, and run massive other outside companies. I mean, he runs SpaceX, Tesla, Starlink, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just too much. And so I think one, he heads back to his day job. So to answer your question, we might see him at a couple events here and there. Two, he's already telegraphed. I think he's getting out of the political game, and that's tied to number one. Like he doesn't like the reputation that he's gotten. He doesn't like the consequences of politics, and he's spent enough money and I don't get the sense that he feels like it's worth the squeeze anymore. So I don't think that check's ever coming. Three, I think we learned the power of the swamp. Right. If anyone could do this, it was Elon. We talked yesterday about Dr. Patrick Shushing. I had a very long conversation with him 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, about why we're not solving cancer. And a lot of it has to do with the swamp. And this is just another extension of that. The swamp, when I talked to the president, when talked to some of these folks, the dream was in excess of $1 trillion. The swamp knows how to fight, and I'm very proud of what Elon did. Just to be clear, I think we needed this dialogue to talk about the excessive bloating and ineffectiveness of so many areas in the federal government. Four, I'm actually fascinated by his status as a special government employee, right? I thought he'd blow right through this using like the sort of Anita Dunn model. And I know that that's an in the weeds thing, but for him to just walk away, because I have had this conversation with a lot of people in the White House about a lot of people that are SGEs, which limits the number of days that you can serve in the White House, but gives you both a lack of necessity to do a full
Disclosures.
Transparency is the word.
transparency with your assets, and two, allows you to maintain outside interest. And I know that's a total in the weeds thing, but I thought these guys were going to blow through that, and Elon adhering to it undermines that argument. And the last thing I would just say is this goes back to my swamp point. Doge will still exist, but when there was a great Bill Barr story from the first term where somebody got sent over to be like a liaison to the Department of Justice, and they came in and started demanding stuff. And Bill Barr looked over and said to someone in his, senior suite of offices, deactivate their ID. And it was like bing. And I just have a feeling that when you have Elon as your top cover, you can get a lot of stuff done. When you go knocking on the door and say, "Hi, my name's Melvin. I'm from Doge," they're going to be like, "Great. There's a corner cubicle over there. Go sit in it and play on your phone."
Well, but
I would go ahead.
I was just going to say, look, one of the great ironies here is most of the Republicans in Congress don't believe in either Doge or the tariffs. Because the answer to undo this tariff mess is Congress just grant them the clear authority, but they don't want to do it because they don't want to cast the votes. Republicans. What's the answer for Doge? Put it all in the budget. You're writing a budget right now. You're going to write another one after you get through reconciliation. They don't want to do it, right? So the split is Trump, kind of, I don't think really believes in this. He's not going to use a ton of capital on Doge. He loved the headlines that they're cutting government, right? Because it's a great kind of like apple pie headline. But when push came to shove and it started getting messy, they cut bait in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just say I was wrong. I thought Musk was going to stay longer, and
I do too. I mean,
yeah.
I think when the tell in that interview the other day is when he said we became everyone's whipping boy.
Yeah.
And I think Dan's right. For a while, the headlines were awesome, like uncovering all this stuff. And then when you see that people are like, yeah, okay, anyway, move on.
Yeah.
I think it was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm rooting out all this stuff and no one's acting and no one's following up. Like, that's frustrating.
Yeah. One more lesson, and I think it applies to Pete Hegseth, that applies to Bobby Kennedy, and the administration and the future Democrats. And then one thing I want to say about Trump. I have a spirited debate with a lot of pro MAGA, pro Doge people when I say the PR was ridiculously bad, and it was all focused on conservative media, and they went way over what they've overpromised. They put stuff out that wasn't true. And Musk's attitude seems to be what a lot of people in this administration is, which is we can just go on Hannity and say what we want, and that's good enough to sell something. I think it was a horrible, horrible job from a PR point of view. And Musk chalks it all up to various things rather than his own incompetence and the incompetence of the people working for him. But I just think that they had an opportunity to make this a much bigger, broader, popular thing rather than just a political football. And you can't go out and say things that are wrong and then have as your excuse be, we're going to make mistakes because we're moving fast. I don't think people accept that from any organization, including the government. Lastly, and Sean, you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. The New York Times is obsessed with driving a wedge between Trump and Musk. They have been from the beginning. And here's the thing about Trump, which is not unique to Trump, but it's not true of everybody. Trump can simultaneously love you and like you and think you're doing sort of a good job, but also be really pissed about you. So you can get Trump saying to people, Musk is horrible, Musk is ruining things, everybody's mad at Musk, Susie thinks Musk is horrible, but he still loves it. He has that capacity. It's not all or nothing for him. So you can hear him say nice things about Musk and bad things about Musk. And that's true of Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, pretty much everyone. Maybe not even JD sometimes, but it's more positive. But it's true of his kids. Like, Trump is able to do that. Sean, as we say it online, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, I've heard him. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes.
He can just, and it's not personal. Like, again,
Exactly.
I've been yelled at like I've never been in my life. And I've also been praised by him. And I mean, in some ways it's kind of refreshing because it's not the typical Washington BS. Like, you don't ever have to wonder where you stand. If he's pissed at you, if he's pleased with you, to a variety of things. And that's the thing, is that the difference with Elon was, and what I think most people didn't get, is that Elon just, when he says yesterday, he was talking about, so I forgot who it was, and he said they're doing a great job. Like, whether it's Pam Bondi, or I think he praised Cash. Like, he's praising them for their job. The thing that Elon has that no one else does is being the richest man in the world. Like, Trump personally, like, sort of admires that guy in a way that he doesn't personally admire everyone else, because they haven't gotten to that level of achievement. So, and it's not personal. Again, he can like you as a person, but he doesn't look at you as a staffer. Like, he looks at Elon as an equal. And so he can be pissed at the job that he's doing, but still admire him as and respect him as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as a visionary.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. Two things now that you won't find anyplace else. And they're both extremely consistent with the ethos of this platform. So, welcoming in our colleague, Bachungar Sargon, who launches a new program with Dan and three colleagues today, which we'll tell you about in a moment, and welcoming back David Burrell of WIC in Georgia, our polling partner for the third edition of the People's Poll. The People's Poll has questions that WIC writes, 1,000-person national poll, but also has questions that members of the two-way family right, Batya, Dan, and I, have some questions, and also questions from you all. So David's going to run through the deck, and Batya and Dan and Sean and I will chat with him about it. And then we're going to take your questions. It can be about anything you want, including about the poll. And if you're on here today and you see your question, please raise your hand and come in and talk to us about it. But we're very proud of what we think is unique. We can't find any example of anybody else using it. Soliciting input from you all. And for the third straight time, David will back me up. Your questions were excellent. Your questions were excellent. And we're just so pleased to have your input. Later, after the program, on the WIC website and in my Substack, you'll get access to the full poll, including the methodology. Again, 1,000-person online poll. And we'll do another one of these. So if you didn't get your questions in this time, you'll have another opportunity. Without further ado, David, thank you for being our partner on this, and go to it.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Y'all let me know when you're seeing it.
I, for one, see it.
Yes.
I got it.
Okay, we're good. All right, great. I'm going to kick it off a little bit differently. As Mark mentioned, one of the unique things about this poll is that we get questions from the people, the two-way community. And we hope we continue to get more and more. And we're able to field those and get America's opinions on your questions. And now for 3 people's polls in a row, there's always multiple questions that we that do polling for a living never would think to ask, or maybe we should have thought to ask, and the results get us thinking, get us talking. And so each week each couple of weeks, we're going to start to pick one of those and lead with it. Question that really got us thinking, and our whole team had different opinions on, that came from Emmanuel from Los Angeles, California, one of the two-way community members. And the question was, which political party do you think is more influenced by corporations and wealthy donors? And now, when originally one of my teammates told me this was in it, I thought, well, if you had asked this in 2012, I would have certainly thought the Republican Party. But the gap in which, and the spread in which people said GOP, and even particular people who voted for Trump said the GOP is more influenced by large corporations and wealthy donors, was pretty stark to me. And it got us thinking, got us talking about what this means, and what would it be like even if you put Trump in there instead of the GOP? And would it be different? Because he certainly hasn't been a friend to numerous large corporations or wealthy donors in recent history.
David, hold on. David, hold on.
Yeah,
hold on.
see,
Hold on. I want to hear from all 3 of you on this, because, again, most of our poll results, unfortunately, in this day and age, are polarized, right? It's like Republicans say one thing, Democrats another. This is a pretty stark finding. Batya, Sean, Dan, love to hear what you guys think about this.
Yeah, I think this is something that I try to tell Republicans a lot. There's only one thing that your average MAGA voter hates more than the Democratic Party, and it's the pre-Trump Republican Party, because they feel like their concerns were sort of pimped out on the altar of the things that the elites agree with them on, which is the cultural issues. And so the elites on the right sort of sold them out because they had them hostage because the Democrats had become so far to the left. And Mark, this is kind of where I diverge from you on the JD front. You know, So the ways in which Trump is competitive and popular are all the ways in which he is different from the pre-Trump GOP. And that is both on social cultural issues and on economic issues and on foreign policy issues. On all of those, he is radically different from the pre-Trump version of the party. And this poll really confirms that even MAGA voters still see the party, the Republican Party, without Trump as anathema to their best interests. That's kind of what I see here.
Yeah, Sean.
Preach, sister.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the challenge is, we just talked about Elon Musk being the richest man in the world and kind of overseeing reorganizing the federal government. And Trump likes to brag about how rich a lot of his cabinet is. I mean, it's hard to, and look, where does he spend his free time? At his country clubs, at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster. It's hard to simply say he is just for the working class when he surrounds himself with rich donors and he's, walks around the Middle East with like a who's who of Fortune 500 CEOs. It's hard.
It's amazing. I will say that to me, it's sort of like a lot of the people who preach about the problem with the media and then go run and do a Politico breakfast. It's like, yep. What are you doing? But I think part of this David, I don't know if he's capable on the fly of doing this, but I think that Bocci's point is kind of the key thing to me. I would actually look at the crosstab in this, and I wonder how many like sort of Trump voters believe that the party, it's probably not the Democrats that are driving this. And equally, by the way, I'd say that there's probably a populist strand of Bernie Sanders voters in the Democratic Party that drives their numbers, because that's the issue here, is that both of those segments of the respective parties believe that there's too much corporate power in the establishment wing of the party.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the mood of America, as you said, Sean, both on the Bernie Sanders left and the MAGA populist right, you see the numbers for neither are, within the margin of error of 0. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's always been true throughout American history, but that's pretty striking as well. All right, David, we talked a lot about this one because I found this one to be one of the most interesting. But you go back to the slides, and we'll chime in as needed.
And I'll just add in, this is the same question, and I wanted to look at the age crosstab because I kind of anticipated that it may be different with 18 to 34-year-olds who aren't, at least a segment of them aren't as familiar with the Republican Party pre-Trump, and these are pretty loud numbers. If you look at how statistically significant they're different than every other age group here.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Because their vision of the party is mostly defined by Trump, who speaks about anti big corporations. That's
right. Normally you see huge gaps on gender, right? And you do see some here, but the age here was the biggest. And
isn't it fascinating that the reverse is true of the Democratic Party? Mm-hmm. Right, that's the highest for us, 18 to 34s, and then it trails off.
Right.
Yep. Really good point, Dane. Okay, David.
Okay, so we have a couple questions on Harvard, so we'll roll through those, and y'all just chime in when and tell me to move on when you want to. So first question is Kylie from Athens. President Trump proposed diverting $3 billion of Harvard grants to trade schools across America. Do you support or oppose this? And largely, 56% of voters either somewhat or strongly supported that. And you obviously see independents up there.
Yeah, I think it's one of the actually more interesting kind of from a political standpoint. I wonder if you're going to hear more about this right here.
I wouldn't be surprised if you hear Caroline use this line a lot today at 1 o'clock, because David, I'll see where you go. I don't want to jump the shark here, but I found when I looked through this last night, it's like competing interests can be 4 things. I don't support Trump attacking Harvard, but if he does, give the money to trade schools. It was sort of like you found this dichotomy of what people would be willing to support, but it's fascinating to me because there's clearly like a strain of they know what they're doing because they added that line in there to say, yeah, but we're going to give it to these people.
If I were a Democrat, I'd jump on this.
I don't make a lot of predictions, but I predict if Boccia runs for president, this will be a key platform, plank of hers. Strip all the money away from Harvard and send it to Ohio trade schools.
I don't know if President Trump is aware, but it was President Obama who defunded vocational training in high schools. I feel like if someone told him that, this would be a really salient talking point.
Well, I'd wonder
if anyone's listening.
Yep.
Although he would say it was done by Barack Hussein Obama if he used that point. All right, David, forward.
All right. Staying on Harvard, Mark from Tyler, Texas. Voters divided on revoking Harvard's ability to enroll international students.
Despite Boccia telling me that no one agrees with me, half the country agrees with me. So
I find this really interesting. Yeah.
Look at the party breakdown.
Yeah. I would have thought this might have been.
But look at the party breakdown, but look at independents on my side. Yeah. And it's just the overwhelming support of Republicans that makes it roughly even. But Democrats and independents are in that.
Yeah, but you notice, by the way, again, it's almost like they got an advanced copy of this, because you saw Rubio's comments yesterday they're really now focusing on Chinese students, right? So they're almost like, hey, so let's go down to another question. I mean, like they know, they almost are tweaking it on as they go.
I think one of us might have leaked it to the White House. They also, of course, the president yesterday was much softer rhetorically on Harvard than
I was about to say
saying he doesn't want Harvard to be hurt. All right, David. Mark,
can I just say one thing really quickly?
Of course.
I would have thought so often now when I see sort of the breakdown of Democrats versus Republicans, there is, of course, this an economic component to this. We know that Trump won the majority of Americans who make under $100,000 a year, and Kamala Harris won with those who make over it. But Dan made a really interesting point yesterday on the morning meeting, which is that there's a lot of, elite Democrats whose kids had been waitlisted at places like Harvard and Yale and Princeton and what have you, who are suddenly getting in because the foreign students are no longer applying for those positions. I think that is something I had not even thought of, and that could be seismic. I think we're not seeing it in this poll, but I feel like that could be could change things a little bit.
Boccia, it's all the talk of the Upper West Side amongst parents of children who previously had no chance.
But Mark, are they giving Trump credit for it, or they're still like, I hate him, but I'm glad my kid's not going to Harvard?
No, they love it. They say it's like the air. Sorry, Mark.
They love it. No, they love it.
I will say, I do want to flag. It does make me uncomfortable that the administration is now going to signal out just Chinese students. I mean, I get the politics of that, but now you're signaling out one country. Like that to me is not.
Dan,
like you're either saying no international students or
Dan, OMG. It's an existential twilight struggle for survival against one country. Of course we should single them out.
I don't.
So make it broader. Make it China, North Korea.
You're afraid of offending the sensibilities of the Chinese people. I don't come close to understanding your position. It's un-American to single out the country that's trying to destroy us.
It's Mark to say that I fully agree that saying you shouldn't buy their routers because they may have back doors into our technology. But to say that their children cannot come to the United States to be educated, to me, I don't like that. Like we are going down a slippery slope.
Have you been replaced by a Manchurian co-host of this program? They're sending their kids here. The best case is we're educating them to beat us. The worst case is they're spies.
He sent his daughter here, for goodness sake.
How could you possibly want Chinese kids in our colleges and universities? How could you possibly? And how could you possibly be offended for them being singled out? I'm stunned.
Singling out is like a racial thing, but I think, Dan, like this is the troll they keep doing on the Democrats, and the Democrats just never learn. Like, do not stand up for Xi Jinping's daughter going to Harvard.
I agree.
It's not racial. We'll take all the Thai kids, and Taiwanese kids who want to come. I'm all for that. Boccia isn't, but I'm for that.
Oh, I get the politics of this 100%. You're right,
It's not politics. It's not politics. It's substance. We're helping them beat us. We're letting them spy on us. We're letting them recruit other spies.
So then other countries that we have issues with, are we going to start banning other people's from coming in?
I'm open to it, but I'm not at all adverse to signaling out the country that's trying to destroy us.
Iran, North Korea. We'll add to it.
I would let Iranians.
Okay, because Mark, under that theory, there are a lot of people that would say that no Saudi children, no people from Dubai should come in here. We shouldn't be taking their money.
I'm open to it too, Dan, but they're not trying to destroy us.
Mark, they fund terrorists who have literally tried to kill us and were successful on 9/11. I mean, this is where I get really uncomfortable, right? Because we take their money in our investment funds. they buy our stock. The president was just there saying, we're not going to tell you how to run your country. But now with again, I just, it's a very slippery slope to start saying, nope, not you, not you, not you, not you.
I'm going to say one more thing, channeling my inner Batya. There's a limited number of slots, Dan. There are Americans who could use them. There are allied countries' kids who could use them. Giving them to Chinese kids. I got nothing against the Chinese kids.
All right. I think we declare a winner here.
Yeah. All right, David. Sorry.
I
last
won one.
I'll move to another section. So on revoking the tax exempt status, 46% of voters support revoking it, and 38% oppose.
Interesting. Next, let's get off of Harvard. Let's do
diversity. All right, so we had a question on political cartoon. This is more inspired by the two-way community, but kind of like we did the shake our head moments last week. We wanted to try to figure out a way to include this. So we asked which is the best on the Biden cover-up. And so I'll walk through all three. And 3. All right, any guesses? Who haven't seen this one yet?
I'm going with Jill.
I can't answer. I saw it.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was, so I feel, and also in the crosstabs they didn't have the picture, so
it was, but very close.
Very close.
I would say that based on the percentage of people who may not know who Jake Tapper is,
right.
It's a very good cartoon of Jake Tapper, I have to say. Yeah. Very well rendered.
I mean, I did put a crosstab on here, a party, because I thought it was interesting that Democrats picked the Jake Tapper one over the other two.
His own party abandoning him.
All right, move on, please.
Okay, so we have some economy, big beautiful bill questions, and kind of starting it off with a bit of a gut check for Trump is, 67% of voters report that their typical grocery bill has increased at least slightly since January 1st, 2025. And I highlighted on the right there the Trump-Harris crosstabs, and that only 11% or 12% say slightly lower or much lower.
It's obviously just shows you that, again, the partisanship with which people answer polling, because obviously, although maybe prices have gone up less in red areas than blue, although I don't think that's the case, the discrepancy is just too high.
I agree. That's what jumped out at me last night, is I was like, wait a second. Like, I can't say I do enough of the grocery shopping that on like stuff on staples. I don't notice, like, and I'm a pretty cheap New England guy. I normally, like, I'll be like, oh my God, that's up 18 cents. I don't see I think slightly higher in some cases I would get, but I agree. That jumped out at me like, whoa, where are you shopping?
Mm-hmm. At the MAGA Mart is where they're shopping.
No, they're not shopping at the MAGA Mart. The people who are on that are definitely.
I mean, some prices are up.
No, I get it. I get that. My point, though, is that some things, yes, I'm aware of it, but for that many people to say much higher,
this is like the Biden people couldn't believe it.
Yeah, but that all right. Anyway, I said, I agree that I think that there was it's a partisan thing more than anything.
All right, David, keep going.
All right, Dan, your question, whether the Big Beautiful Bill will help or hurt family finances. And
that just tells me that the race to define this bill a little bit is still out there.
That's exactly right, Dan.
If you split the make no difference and you start, it becomes like a 50 to 40, 50-35 issue. There's a lot of work left to be done.
And remember that if you don't pass the bill, your 66% of Americans' tax bills will go up. So to your point, Dan, you're absolutely right. If the Republicans don't go out there and define this first as beneficial to you for a variety of reasons, then they're going to get screwed on this, because you're doing all this for naught. And this should be a big wake up call for Speaker Johnson, the NRCC, and outside groups.
David, do you have party ID on this one?
I don't have it.
That's all right. It's all right. I'm just curious what independent.
I don't have it up. It's in the crosstabs.
I'm just curious what independent said on this one. But go ahead. And that question was from Dan Turrentine of New York City. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, apparently
text me that answer, Mark, while we're on it.
Good
But also,
question.
what I find really interesting about this is that the criticism from the Democrats of the big, beautiful bill is that it is a giveaway to the rich. And yet, Democrats are now overrepresented in the rich. And yet, here we have 54% of Harris voters saying it would hurt their finances, which is like contradicting their own criticism of the bill. So I think there's also probably some partisanship happening here as well.
Yes,
Oh,
there
and that's the
is.
irony is the party still doesn't recognize it's the
Right.
white collar, not the blue collar party right now. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, from Mark, I like this one. 63% of voters think it's worth trying or achievable for Apple to make the iPhone in the US. Now, there's a couple different ways you write that headline, but I didn't expect this result. Let's put it that way.
I didn't either, and I feel this is the greatest indication of the ignorance of the American people, because it's a crazy answer that almost half of Republicans think we can make iPhones in the U.S. All right.
But this gets back to what I keep saying about Trump. What people look at that middle answer and the way that it's phrased. And I don't know if you wrote that, Mark, or David did, but comma, worth trying. That's the thing about
Yeah.
Trump, is that his answer to everything is, I'll fight for it. I'll try, because too many people have done nothing in the past and given us a bunch of excuses. People want you to at least try to fight. That's the thing about Doge. That's the thing with tariffs. That's the thing with bringing reshoring stuff, is don't just tell us it can't happen. Go out there and fight for it and try. And Trump's at least willing to be that fighter that we've asked, our politicians to be.
Totally agree. Go ahead,
I
Dan.
mean, I think the challenge is that in the abstract, that's right. The problem Trump keeps bumping into is when reality hits. So if you said, but worth trying and paying a few $1,000s more for the iPhone, I bet those numbers go down.
Wait,
I
David,
believe-
but
Go
isn't
ahead.
37 and 47 84, not 63? I'm an English major, but
Oh yeah, you're right. That's my apologies. Typo.
Yeah.
so is the typo in the total or in the
It's in the headline.
Yeah.
so it's
So
actually
it's much higher than that.
84%
Yeah,
think
my
it's
apologies.
realistic
Yes.
or worth trying.
Yes.
That's unbelievable news for the president's tariffs
It is.
program.
It is indeed. And I believe I wrote the language because before I was an entrepreneur, I used to write poll questions. But I think Sean's exactly right, which is worth trying is the reason why elites are more up in arms about the tariffs and more enthusiastic about onshoring or less enthusiastic about onshoring than the people. The people want to try.
But I think you do have to then say that once reality hits, the people have run away, right? Doge was popular for a month. Then it became unpopular. Tariffs were popular when they were talked about. They become unpopular when they're executed. That's the challenge for Trump.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. David, to pick two more, and then we're going to open it up to others.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the bias on Q. So here, 57% of voters believe the best way to balance the budget is to raise taxes on the wealthy, compared to 16% said cutting entitlement programs. As you can see, people who make $250,000 or more were the ones who wanted to cut entitlement programs, and the cross tab over here.
Incredible
this
question.
is pretty consistent across polling now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, I know
I'm actually really upset about this one. It pissed me off.
Bocce, you've been saying this for a while.
I've been saying this for a long time.
Mark,
And every poll I've seen, aside from this one, has the number much, much higher, including for Republican voters, like 50 to 60 to 70%, especially when it's given as a choice between cutting entitlements and raising taxes on the rich. This is just like a bonanza waiting to happen for Trump. Can you imagine forcing every Democratic politician to vote against a bill that raises taxes on the wealthy from 37% to 39%? It's such a small amount, and it would be so epic as a troll, as policy to generate revenue, to pay down the budget.
Couldn't agree more.
And the thing, look, here's the thing that constantly upsets me.
He's trolling his own party.
It's funny because I sort of just had the aha moment why Steve Bannon keeps talking about this.
Yeah.
And Mark Halperin.
the problem that I fundamentally have is, look, America, the privilege of living in this amazing country is that we have to pay for things. Good roads and bridges, a military, things like that. I get that. And that's what we have to face as Americans. But what pisses me off is that if you're going to ask me or any American for more money, respect the money that I've sent to Washington already. And this is where I love what Doge was doing. And if you're not in Washington willing, any of these guys, and Dan, you're right, they don't see the merit. It's just, hey, ask me for more money. I feel like this is my son the other day said, can I get some more money for lunch? And I said, what'd you do with the money I gave you the other day? And he goes, well, I spent it. And I go, on what? Like, there needs to be an accountability. If you're going to come back to me and say, work harder, pay more, tell me what you spent the money on, and they can't do it. The Pentagon can't pass an audit. Until you pass an audit, don't ask me for more money. And I think that's the problem with, I don't doubt the results in this, but it pisses me off that most Americans would rather say, hey, somebody else keep paying the bill, and we're not going to require anyone to have any accountability.
Well, can I just say briefly, just 2 points on that. The first is I don't know if this is possible. I'm not like smart enough or educated enough, but it seems to me like they should be able to create a fund out of that, just from the 37% to the 39%, and only use it to pay down the deficit. Like, that seems obvious. I totally agree with you, Sean. Like, that shouldn't, that, because that is a gift from wealthy people. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I would do it if I was in charge. The other thing I would say is, just very quickly, we are asking working class people to pay more for things through the tariffs. I mean, I don't agree that it's like a tax on, I think a lot of it gets paid back to us in many different ways. But in order to do very important things for our nation on national security, reshoring manufacturing, and they are doing it, and they are willing to do it if it means a better future for their children. And I just can't, the way you feel about being asked to pay for waste, I feel about asking the least of us to be making sacrifices and not asking for something in return from the people who have the most.
I agree. And all I'll say is there's nothing magic about the current top rate. It's not like set in stone. It's not like we're moving from some sanctified rate. It's just asking rich people to pay more. All right, David.
Well, but can I just say, though, because I want to be clear, this is not the Democrats opposing this. Bacha, they get 90% of them.
Of course.
It's Republican on Republican. Yeah, and as someone who's was in the trenches on this, the small business community goes ape, what on that issue. That is your biggest 100%. Obstacle.
But they're on the wrong side of public opinion in politics. All right, David, take the slides down. Please stay with us. Bacha, stay with us. We open it up for questions.
Hey,
and again, there's Wayne. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
One quick point. We're not going to get to it today, but I just because of the timing of this, I want to just say it for the record. We can pick it up any other day. Dan has talked about this for a while, so I'll give him credit. But in the poll, they asked Elon's favorable, unfavorable. Bottom line is it's not great. Woke up this morning, and for the last 24 hours on DC television, because it's DC area television, Metro, but in Northern Virginia, every Democrat running for attorney general and lieutenant governor talks about they're running to fight Trump and Musk. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're running for lieutenant governor of Virginia, the Commonwealth really isn't dealing with Elon Musk a lot in terms of, but it just shows that their polling is saying go after Musk to be attorney general or lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yep.
I just found it fascinating because it literally, you can tell that they're seeing that and saying, run against Elon Musk to be,
particularly where all those government jobs are.
He'll be in more midterm ads than Kamala Harris. David, stay with us. Love the poll. Again, a poll will be in my Substack after the program. It'll be on the WIC website. There's lots more interesting questions. I got some questions in there about whether people buy Chinese products or not, and whether they think they're high quality. I'm super grateful to have that data. Hannah, welcome in. Unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind. And thank you for being part of Two Way.
Hi, Mark. I'm so happy I get to be on here with Bacha. I love her so much. I'm looking forward to the group chat this afternoon because I love her and Dan. I only raised my hand because y'all used my poll question. I was so excited. I've been trying to get a good one in. I asked about the groceries because mine are actually less than they were on January 1st, just only slightly.
Where do you live, Hannah?
Virginia.
Virginia. Which part of Virginia?
Central Virginia.
And your grocery prices on balance are lower since Donald Trump took office?
Slightly, but still lower, yes.
Interesting. Well, thank you for submitting the question. Do you want to ask a question now or just take another victory lap on your poll?
Nope, just going to try to keep submitting great poll questions.
Okay. We're really grateful to you. Really grateful to you for being part of it, and love the fact that you got to be here to tell us that was yours. So thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
David,
see you on the group chat.
Yeah, and see you at 4. David, to the extent you've gotten feedback from your colleagues at WIC or in general, how do polling professionals feel about the People's Poll and people like Hannah getting to submit questions?
Well, they think it's the most obvious idea that they never thought of, I would say, because you do get so much unique questions, and that doesn't surprise anyone. Because the people think differently than we do who are in the space, the people in the show and my polling peers. And so yeah, that I would say that's the major reaction you get.
Yeah, I love it, and I see a lot of them. And again, like Hannah, it's like maybe we would have thought of it, but maybe not. And so many of the people submissions are things we wouldn't have thought of. And it's not just the topics; it's the language and the choices that are really granular and really reflective of a reality that people in the big city of Atlanta may not think of, let alone Gotham City. Hannah, thank you again. Bob, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are after you unmute what's on your mind, and thank you for being part of Two-Way.
Hi, good morning. I'm from Dixon, Illinois. Thanks for taking me this morning. I just had a comment. First of all, I'd like to compliment everybody. I know the last listener had submitted a poll question, and I thought in general the poll questions seemed to be pretty outstanding, and that's part of the reason that I come to a place like Two-Way is to hear that kind of information. I had a comment though about that poll question that was about the I think it was the iPhones being built in the United States. And one of the things, and I put that in the chat, Mark, that I think maybe you had missed is when you throw in that concept of is it worth trying, you're naturally going to get a lot of people to say, well, sure, it's worth trying. And part of that is from experience. I worked in a business that involved financing sometimes. And when you try to explain to people that maybe they weren't going to qualify, let's just put it that way. And, it might actually hurt them. For instance, if we submitted this loan just to get what we pretty much, knew were going to be declines, and that running their credit that many times might be bad for them. And sometimes they could confuse that with, and don't get me wrong, we would always try if the customer absolutely insisted on it. But like they would get the impression sometimes on how you handled it as if you were, maybe a little too short or dismissive about it.
Yeah.
That, well,
Bob,
it's not worth, you're not trying for me.
Yeah, Bob, I think the wisdom of Dixon and Sean references as well, which is the point of the poll question is elites say don't try because it's impossible, because our economic models say it's impossible.
Right.
The American people think, yeah, let's try. President Trump thinks we should try. We don't like the status quo. We don't like the trajectory of all these manufacturing jobs leaving the United States. So yeah, let's try. And I think that's why I was so interested to see the outcome. And I was surprised at how overwhelming it was. Because
Mark, one of the things that I like about this
David.
poll one of the things I like about this concept that I'll add to that is, in polling, a lot of times in internal polls, especially, you don't see them as much on public polls, but we're allowed to show them here, is that you're kind of testing a viewpoint. That's how people think. Yeah, it could be tough, but it's worth trying. And so you just want to get people's reaction to that viewpoint. So it's not always like, hey, let's test this academic grade like it's on a ballot, right?
Exactly.
And you don't have any context. Sometimes the context is a viewpoint. And that's what makes some of these questions really interesting, is some people want to test their viewpoints against each other. And
well said. Well said, David. Well said.
And we know from focus groups, and Mark, you and I were talking to a congressperson from Michigan who said that a lot of working class voters appreciate that Donald Trump tries, even if he only moves the ball 5 or 10%. And they have said to the Democrats, but what did you do? And exactly. that is a huge problem for our party.
Bob, thank you. Grateful to you. Celia, welcome in. Tell Batya or tell Dan he's wrong about the Chinese.
Okay, and I have to keep this short because I have to hop on a work call at 10, but I'll try to keep it as concise as I can. So my red flag with China actually started 10 years ago when I was a freshman at the University of Iowa. And there is a very significant population of Chinese international students there. I looked it up the other day. It's well over 50% of international students at Iowa are from China. And there was a kid in my dorm on my floor my freshman year who was from Beijing City, and he was very friendly, and he opened up a lot about what that experience is like on the Chinese side. And there's a great article from 2015 in the Cedar Rapids Gazette that goes over this. I can send a link that discusses the agents that they work with starting in high school. And they keep in contact with those agents in China throughout their entire college career. And they are all required because every single student is affiliated by relation or employment with the CCP. They don't send non-affiliated students because all or some of their schooling is funded by the CCP. And they are required to return to China upon completion of schooling to be employed in China. So we don't even really reap the benefits of educating this population because they are legally not allowed by the Chinese government, as far as this student explained to me, to stay here and work.
Celia,
And then,
Celia, can you imagine how hard they laugh at us in Beijing that we're just opening our doors, letting them come to our universities, letting them spy on our students, letting them learn from the
yes,
best colleges and universities in the world, and then going back to Beijing filled with spy
yes.
information and
Well, and
skills.
these are
Can you
all,
imagine how hard they laugh at us?
exactly. And these are all anecdotes. But I mean, even in Knoxville, Tennessee, 45 minutes northeast of us, there's a small private Christian college where a professor was arrested in the past 2 years for basically being an agent of the CCP and sending over valuable information from that school and his research to the Chinese
I'm
government.
sure it's the only time that's happened.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
anyway, kind of thoughts. I've
Yeah.
always been questioning
Yeah.
kind of that relationship.
Celia, thank you. Go make your work call, and thank you for weighing in. And Dan will write you a letter of apology. And in the great spirit of the Chinese Communist Party, he'll also stand in the corner with a dunce cap on for 5 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's the first I've heard that they are funded by the CCP. They have to return and work. You know, it's almost like going into the United States Navy or Army, and you have to serve for 7 years. If that is true, that is a different story. I will then admit that I would be wrong, but I have not heard that before. Doesn't mean it's not true. But
Dan, all I can say with respect is I'm glad you weren't head of the CIA during the Cold War.
For many reasons. Yes.
For many reasons. All right. David Burrell, thank you. Tell us where people can read the poll.
Oh, yeah.
After you correct that headline.
Mark email, wick.io. Yeah, just wick.io, and it'll be on our blog page.
With the fixed number in the headline that none of us
right. Thank you, Bye.
Yes. All right, David. Very grateful to you, and we look forward for People's Poll number 4 coming soon. Batya and Dan are premiering a show on this platform at 4 p.m. today. Long coming. Go ahead and put up the promo. Batya, tell people why this show will be different than most chat shows.
First of all, because we all really like each other. We are all committed to the values that 2A was founded on, of peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. We all come from genuinely different points of view, but believe deeply in the pursuit of common ground, and that more unites us as Americans than divides us. And because we're genuinely curious about what each other thinks. So we really hope you'll join us.
And sorry to interrupt, but you'll be taking questions from the 2A community.
Course,
so people,
naturally.
just as people can be part of the People's Poll, they can be part of the group chat.
Exactly. That's obviously, well, Mark, when you said different from all shows, that's not different from this show, but it is different from other chat shows.
Yes,
and we are
yes, ma'am.
very, very excited to be welcoming you guys into our conversation as well. Dan, what are you most looking forward to at 4 p.m. today?
Yeah, I agree. Batya, you said it well. I mean, we've done some practice runs, and every single time I'm just kind of blown away at the different, like how everyone thinks about stuff. It is different because we all come from kind of different spheres of the political spectrum. And, you know, if you just stop and listen and think, it's awesome, right? You really get to understand how a significant, as Mark would say, tens of millions of people are thinking about issues, question your own, lens that you're looking at an issue. And some of us are okay to say when we're wrong.
Dan, real quick, just tell folks who your other 3 colleagues are.
Sure. Emma Jo Morris, who comes from the MAGA wing, who broke the Hunter Biden laptop story when she was at the New York Post. Nina Turner, who was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders, co-chair of both his presidential campaigns, former state senator from Ohio. And Ravi Suave, who is a libertarian and just has a very, very wicked sense of humor, as do all of them. And so, again, the full spectrum. For those who think I'm too moderate and there's no progressive voice on 2-way, wait until you hear Nina.
Yeah. Break a leg at 4 p.m. We look forward to it. It's every Thursdays at 4 p.m. on the two-way platform if you want to be in the chat, or on YouTube. Break a leg YouTube. We'll see you at 4. Sean, what do you have tonight?
We've got a great panel. David Vella, the head of GoPac, Ashley Hayek from America First Policy Institute, and then the host of the Stephen Gardner Show. If you've never heard Stephen Gardner before, I'm telling you, he's one of these voices out on YouTube that I've had the privilege of going on his show a few times, but so one of these people that I think to some degree slides under the radar, a huge audience, and I'm excited to have him on the show for the first time. So we got a great thing today. And then tomorrow, by the way, speaking of polling, and I'm going to turn the tables. Tomorrow we've got both McLaughlin brothers on at once.
Ooh.
And I think I'm going to take a lot of David Burrell's material and ask them how this is going to, they just did a big poll on the congressional battlegrounds, but I want to put them on the spot on some of these big issues, because I agree with a lot of the way these issues were framed are not traditional, and yet I think are critical to understanding the landscape going into the midterm. So,
all right, look forward to that. Finally, 2 other programs on Two-Way tonight. Two-Way tonight, my program 6 p.m. tonight, and at 7 o'clock, Michael Moynihan Report. It's actually taping at 2. So if you want to be live and interactive with Ari Richter and Michael, 2 o'clock on Two-Way, and then it'll stream at 7 p.m. on the YouTube channel. Mercedes Schlapp and Bob Russell are my guests at 6, by the way. Thank you for watching. Very grateful to Peyton and the other folks at WIC who worked with David on the poll. Very grateful to all of you who submitted questions and asked questions today. And very grateful to Batya for joining us. And again, look forward to seeing you at 4. And we'll be back in 23 hours right here. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
23.